He left me for a rich woman, not knowing I was building an empire in silence. My name is Arya Knox. And the day my husband left me for a rich woman was not the day my life fell apart. It was the day I finally saw everything clearly. But before that moment, I was someone else entirely. Someone quieter. Someone who believed that love, loyalty, and sacrifice were enough to hold a life together. We met at a prestigious university in Manitoba, Canada. Back then, we were inseparable. People called us lovebirds because we were always together studying, laughing, sharing meals, and planning a future that felt certain. He used to look at me like I was enough, like I was everything. After graduation, things moved fast. He secured a good job, and within months, we got married. It felt natural, like the next step in a story that had already been written. We made a decision together. I would stay home for a few years, support him, and build stability while he focused on his career. I trusted him completely, so I didn't hesitate. At first, everything felt right. He was kind, attentive, present. We talked about our future almost every night, where we would live, what we would build, the life we would create together. But slowly, something changed. Not in a way that was loud, not in a way that demanded attention, just small shifts. His tone became shorter, his patience thinner, his attention divided. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it would pass. But deep down, there was a quiet voice I kept ignoring. Something was slipping, and I didn't realize then that I was the only one still holding on. The change didn't come like a storm. It came like a slow fade, so gradual that I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. He started coming home later, not extremely late, but late enough to feel different. The kind of late that leaves space for questions. When I asked, he always had an answer. Meetings ran over. Deadlines are tight. I'm trying to secure something big. And I believed him, because at that point, trusting him was still easier than questioning everything. But then something shifted. Not in his schedule, in his tone. Why do you always need money? He asked one evening, dropping his keys on the table without even looking at me. The question caught me off guard. I stared at him, unsure if I had heard him correctly. I'm managing the house, I replied carefully. He sighed, long and irritated. It feels like I'm the only one doing anything, he said. That moment didn't just hurt, it stayed, because everything I had been doing suddenly felt invisible. Every effort, every sacrifice, every quiet contribution. Gone. But I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I stayed quiet. And in that silence, something inside me began to shift. As time passed, his distance became something I could no longer ignore. He was still there physically, sitting across from me, walking through the same spaces, sharing the same home. But emotionally, he felt somewhere else. Conversations became shorter. Eye contact became rare. Even the silence between us felt different, heavier, colder. Then he started mentioning someone new. My boss is very independent, he said one evening, scrolling through his phone with a faint smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. She knows how to handle things. I nodded. But something about it stayed with me. Because it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. There was admiration in his voice. Respect. Something deeper than casual conversation. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Not because I had proof of anything, but because something inside me felt unsettled. For the first time, I felt like I was slowly being replaced. And the worst part was, I didn't know when it started. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I started paying attention. Not in an obvious way. Quietly, carefully. I noticed how often her name appeared in his conversations, how his mood shifted after certain calls, how his posture changed when he checked his phone. The same man who barely had energy for me suddenly had energy for something else. And that realization did something unexpected. It didn't break me. It woke me up, because instead of reacting emotionally, I made a decision. If he believed I was weak, dependent, unaware, I would let him keep believing it. And while he believed that, I would start building something he couldn't see, something that didn't rely on him, something that belonged only to me. Quietly, carefully, without warning. I started late at night. When everything was quiet and he was asleep, I opened my laptop and began learning. I didn't have a clear plan. Just a strong need to create something of my own. I explored online business, digital skills, and ways to earn from home. At first, it was overwhelming. Too many options, too many mistakes, too much uncertainty. But I didn't stop, because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for something to change. I was making it change. Night after night, I learned. Practiced, failed, tried again, and slowly, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just the woman he overlooked anymore. I was becoming someone else. Someone focused, someone independent, someone he didn't understand yet. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Because while he was looking elsewhere for something better, I was quietly becoming everything he thought I wasn't. Weeks turned into months, and I stayed consistent. I practiced daily, failed often, learned constantly. Then one day, something changed. I earned my first income. It wasn't much, but it meant everything, because it proved something important. I could build something on my own, and that realization changed how I saw myself. While I was growing quietly, he was drifting further away. Late nights became normal. Conversations became rare. And then the rumors started. At first, they were unclear, easy to dismiss, but over time, they became impossible to ignore. He wasn't just working late, he was seeing her. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't react. I watched, because now I understood something clearly. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about control. And for the first time, I was no longer powerless. The rumors stopped being rumors. The night I followed him, he told me he had a late meeting, and I nodded like always. But this time, something inside me refused to stay quiet. After he left, I waited just long enough not to raise suspicion, then picked up my keys and followed at a distance. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight. He didn't drive toward his office. Instead, he went downtown, moving with purpose. Like this wasn't new. I stayed far enough behind so he wouldn't notice. When he parked, I slowed down and watched carefully from across the street. That's when I saw her. She was already there, standing outside a quiet, expensive place. Confident, comfortable. Like she belonged there. Like she had been waiting for him. He stepped out of his car and looked at her. Then he smiled. Not the tired, distant smile he gave me at home. Something warmer, something real. That moment didn't break me. It clarified everything, because I finally understood the truth. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. And now, I knew exactly where I stood. That night, I expected to fall apart. I thought I would cry, confront him, or lose control in some way. But I didn't. Instead, I felt calm, not empty, not numb, clear. I sat quietly, replaying everything in my mind, the way he looked at her, the comfort between them. The ease. When he came home, he acted normal. "How was your day?" he asked casually. "Fine," I replied. He nodded, relaxed, like nothing had changed. That was when I realized something important. This wasn't new. This was something he had already accepted. And if he was that comfortable lying, then confronting him now would only make him more careful, more hidden. So I made a decision. I would stay quiet. Not because I was weak, but because I was preparing. From that moment, I changed, but only on the inside. On the outside, I stayed the same. Calm, supportive, predictable. That made him relax even more. And that was his mistake. He stopped being careful. He left his phone on the table more often, took calls without stepping away, smiled at messages openly. He believed I wasn't paying attention anymore, but I was watching everything. One evening, his phone lit up while he was in the shower. I didn't touch it, but I saw the name clearly. Her name. No code. No disguise. That told me everything. He felt safe. And people who feel safe make careless decisions. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask questions. Because now, I wasn't searching for truth anymore. I already had it. While his world became careless, mine became focused. My online business began to grow faster. What started as small steps turned into steady progress. Clients came in regularly. Payments became consistent. I built structure into my days. I tracked my work. I improved my skills. And slowly, something inside me changed. I stopped feeling dependent. I stopped feeling small. I stopped waiting for him to define my value because I was creating my own. I didn't tell him anything. I didn't show any progress because this wasn't about proving anything yet. This was about building something real, something stable, something mine. And for the first time, I felt powerful. The moment I had been expecting finally came. One evening, he sat across from me with a calm expression that felt unfamiliar. "I think we should separate," he said. Just like that. No hesitation, no emotion. I looked at him. "Why?" He didn't pause. "She can give me a better life." The words were direct, cold, but they didn't break me. Because by then, I had already changed. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't try to convince him to stay. I simply nodded. "If that's what you want," I said. He looked relieved. That stayed with me. Relief. Like I had been something he needed to escape from. But what he didn't understand was this: I wasn't losing anything. I was stepping into something stronger. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of being alone. The separation process was quiet and controlled. I didn't fight him. I didn't demand anything beyond what was fair, because I already had something more valuable, a plan. And that plan didn't include him. While he walked away believing he had made the better choice, I was building something he couldn't see. Every day, I worked. Every day, I grew. Every day, I became stronger. And for the first time, my future felt completely mine. Months passed and everything changed. My business expanded beyond what I had imagined. Clients increased. Income became stable. Opportunities opened up. I built systems, created structure, focused on growth. I was no longer surviving. I was building something real, something strong, something independent. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for anything. I had already created it. Months passed, and my life became something I once thought I would never have again: peace. What started as quiet effort late at night had grown into something structured, stable, and powerful. My online business was no longer uncertain. It had clients, contracts, and steady income that didn't depend on luck or anyone else's approval. I built discipline into everything. I woke up early, planned each day carefully, and worked with focus. Every decision I made now had purpose. I wasn't reacting to life anymore. I was directing it. For the first time in years, I felt completely in control, not just financially, but emotionally. I no longer waited for validation. I no longer depended on someone else's choices to define my future. Occasionally, I heard updates about him through mutual contacts. Nothing direct, just fragments. He was still with her, still living the life he had chosen. But something about those updates felt incomplete. Not wrong, just not as perfect as it sounded. And that was the first sign. Because I understood something important. When people try too hard to present a perfect life, it usually means something underneath is breaking. The updates became clearer over time, and this time, they carried a different tone. At first, it sounded normal business pressure, delayed projects, investors asking questions. Nothing unusual on the surface, but then the details became sharper. Projects were failing, contracts were not being renewed, investors were pulling back, and then something unexpected surfaced. Debt, not. Small debt, hidden debt, the kind that doesn't disappear quietly. That was when everything started to make sense. The success he had chosen was built on something unstable. I didn't react. I didn't celebrate. I simply observed. Because I understood something clearly. When a life is built on appearance instead of foundation, it only takes one crack for everything to collapse. And once that collapse begins, it doesn't stop halfway. The collapse didn't take long after that. Her company didn't just struggle, it unraveled. Contracts were lost. Partnerships ended. Financial support disappeared almost overnight. The hidden debt surfaced fully. And everything changed. The lifestyle he had chosen began to disappear. The comfort, the image, the security, all gone. This time, the update came directly. "He's not doing well," someone told me quietly. I nodded, not surprised, because I had seen the pattern long before the outcome appeared. Choices built on temporary. Advantage don't last, and when they fail, they collapse completely. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. Because this wasn't revenge. This was consequence. And consequences don't need help. They arrive on their own. A few days later, I saw his name appear on my phone again, for the first time in months. I stared at the screen as it rang. Once, twice, then it stopped. Moments later, it rang again. This time, I answered, "Hello?" There was a pause. Then his voice came through softer than I remembered. "I need to talk to you," he said carefully. I didn't respond immediately, because I already knew why he was calling. And for the first time, I wasn't the one waiting for answers. He was. We met a few days later in a quiet place we both knew. Everything felt familiar, yet completely different. He looked different. Not just tired, but smaller somehow. The confidence he once carried was gone. "I made a mistake," he said. "I didn't understand what I had. I listened quietly, because now I didn't need to be heard." He continued, explaining how everything had fallen apart, how nothing was stable anymore. Then he said something unexpected. "She's trying to fix it, but it's worse than it looks." That confirmed everything. Not just the collapse, but the truth behind it. Then he said something that revealed more than he realized. "I didn't know you had built all this," he added quietly. I looked at him calmly, and in that moment, everything became simple. He never left because I had nothing. He left because he believed I would always have nothing. And that belief was his biggest mistake. Because while he was chasing something that looked powerful, I was building something that actually was. "I didn't lose you," I said quietly. "You lost what you never valued." He didn't respond, because there was nothing left to say. The truth had already done its work, and sometimes silence carries more weight than words. I stood, up slowly, ready to leave. There was no anger left in me, no regret, just clarity, because I wasn't the same person he had left behind. I had rebuilt myself stronger, independent, and complete. And I didn't need anything from him anymore. Not answers, not apologies, nothing. He chose wealth over me. But what he didn't understand was this: I became the wealth he could never reach. Not just financially, but in strength, independence, and clarity. And in the end, I didn't need revenge, because life had already delivered everything I didn't have to. I simply moved forward and left him exactly where he chose to be. I used to believe that being chosen meant being valued. I thought that if someone stayed, it meant I was enough. And if they left, it meant I wasn't. That was the story I told myself for a long time. A story built on quiet sacrifice, silent loyalty, and the hope that love alone could hold everything together. But I understand something now that I didn't understand then. Being chosen by the wrong person is not a victory, and being left by someone who never truly saw your worth is not a loss. It's a release, because what I thought was love was actually limitation. What I thought was stability was actually dependence. And what I thought was security was just comfort wrapped in fear. I was afraid to lose what I had, not realizing that what I had was already shrinking me, piece by piece, quietly, until I became someone I barely recognized. someone who waited, someone who asked, someone who adjusted herself just to fit into a space that was never designed to hold her fully. But the moment he walked away, everything changed. Not because I was ready, not because I was strong, but because I had no choice. And sometimes, that's where real growth begins. Not in comfort, not in certainty, but in disruption. In the moment where everything you relied on disappears and you're left with nothing but yourself. At first, that feels like loss. But if you stay long enough, if you refuse to run back to what broke you, you begin to see it differently. You begin to understand that you were never left empty. You were left with space. Space to rebuild. Space to grow. Space to finally become the person you were always meant to be, without limitation. And that's what I did. Not loudly, not publicly, not for validation, but quietly, consistently, relentlessly. While the world thought I had nothing, I was building something they couldn't see. While he thought I needed him, I was learning that I never did. And that realization changed everything. Because the moment you stop needing someone to complete you, you stop accepting less than you deserve. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that cannot hold your growth. You stop asking for permission to become who you are, and instead, you begin to move differently. You become more intentional, more focused, more aware. You stop reacting and start creating. That's when your life shifts, not when everything around you changes, but when you change how you see yourself. Because everything I built didn't start with money. It didn't start with opportunity. It didn't even start with confidence. It started with a decision, a quiet, personal decision that I would no longer be defined by what someone else failed to see in me, that I would no longer measure my value based on someone else's choices, that I would no longer wait to be chosen when I could choose myself. And once I made that decision, everything followed. Not immediately, not easily, but steadily. And that's the part people don't talk about. Growth is not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not instant. It's quiet. It's repetitive. It's uncomfortable. It's showing up on the days when nothing feels like it's working, and continuing anyway. It's believing in something you can't yet see, and building it piece by piece, until one day it becomes real. And when it does, you realize something even more important. You didn't just build a better life, you built a stronger version of yourself, one that doesn't break easily, one that doesn't depend on approval, one that doesn't settle for comfort over growth. And that version of you is something no one can take away. Not rejection, not betrayal, not loss, nothing. Because it was built from within. And that's why I don't look back with anger. I don't need to. Because I understand now that what happened to me didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It showed me who I was without limits, without dependency, without illusion. And more importantly, it showed me who I never wanted to be again. Someone who waits, someone who begs, someone who stays where they are not valued. That version of me is gone. And I don't miss her, because the woman I became is stronger, clearer, unshakable. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this. You don't lose when someone walks away from you. You lose when you abandon yourself trying to make them stay. And I refuse to do that ever again. So no, I didn't lose him. I didn't lose anything. I gained clarity. I gained strength. I gained control over my own life. And most importantly, I found myself. Not the version shaped by expectations. Not the version built around someone else's approval, but the real version. The one that was always there, waiting to be fully seen. And now that I've seen her, I will never shrink again. I will never settle again. I will never forget again. Because I didn't just rebuild my life. I reclaimed it. And that is something no one can ever take from me.